So there it is, the stereo, the most brutal stereo system ever made. Of course, this was just on the previous video, if you watched it, where I used one Lyra-4 to talk a little bit about my first experience with it. But yeah, this is insane. So it is like I have the Lyra-8, but it's stereo. They could have done it, I guess, in the Lyra-8, maybe a new version like stereo with it. But this is really cool because you can also choose to just get one, and it's such a small instrument that you can take everywhere with you. So a little bit about the story. Like, I knew this instrument is great from the beginning. Like, I knew I would have it one day because it really matches the way I work with sound. But it took a long time because mainly I was seeing it everywhere and I was not really curious about it anymore, which is a pity, really. Like, I've overexposed myself into the YouTube madness, obviously. So I think I don't do anymore. Like, if an instrument seems challenging, seems interesting enough, I just have to borrow one if I can find it on my area from a friend, or watch maybe a live show with it. But that's it. No tutorials, no endless going through hundreds of videos about people doing something with it. You need to have first-hand experience, obviously. Anyway, so still, it's really important that if there is a shop with electronic instruments, that you just go and tell them you need to stock this instrument. This is amazing. Even if it's a little small shop and it doesn't have a lot of things and they don't even know this thing exists, you gotta tell them, because this is incredible. I just had my 4-year-old kid playing with it, and he played so long with it. He has no idea what's going on, but he was just making some incredible sounds that I don't even dare to recreate, just because he was just turning knobs out of curiosity. So that's another thing. I remember Brian Eno when he said in an interview that art is how adults play. And this is incredible. It opens a world up. It opened a world up for me. This is a little game for adults and for kids, always, obviously. And we need to approach it with that childlike curiosity. Like, what is this? What does this do? Just turn the knobs. Even if the voice is, just turn it off. No sound. Just turn the knobs. Don't know what you're doing. Don't read the manual. I mean, yes, there are people who read the manuals. They want to know exactly what's happening. And there are people like me who do never read the manuals. But I do remember that most of artists that I admire, they never read manuals because they want to explore the instrument. They want to know firsthand how it sounds like with the exploration, without reading a manual. Like, oh, this knob does that, and of course, some instruments are designed more intuitively. So, you have the tune. Okay, that's obviously a tune. Sharp, I wouldn't know what it is, but if you turn it, you hear what it does, right? The mod with the arrows, the numbers, the switches. It's not also very too complex. So there's a few elements properly combined with each other that make an instrument that feels complete. So I know it's famous instrument, and you've probably seen many videos about it. But I would like to stress how important it is, all these little modules on it and the combination of all these things together. So the distortion is brutal and it pushes the low frequencies. So this is a doom instrument, for those who know what that is. The delay, it's an incredible self-contained delay with two waveforms. So it has a modulation source already in it. The time and the feedback and the mix, that's typical. But it can self-oscillate, but you can have also the LFO modulating it. And the hyper LFO, which is key to movement in the sound here. The hyper LFO is a genius idea. Instead of just putting a simple LFO or an envelope, which is an overrated LFO for me, having two frequencies, and then you have a logic function and of or, you create a little bit more interesting rhythms in there, just without adding a second LFO frequency. That's it. Simple, effective. Now, we have the hold. Already too brutal. The hold that activates all the notes at the same time. You don't need it if you are going to play the instrument with your fingers, which I recommend because it's beautiful. It's an interesting way to work with an instrument. The modulation sources from oscillators 1 and 2 can modulate, oscillators 3 and 4, and vice versa. You can have the LFO modulating this side or this side, the first two or the last two oscillators. And the modulation amount, when it goes to complete clockwise, so complete open, it creates much more. It creates crazy sounds that you don't expect. So if you are looking for an instrument that it is very close to like a feedback patch that I have a lot in my channels, like a search system that's feedbacking, or Seat Lombard instruments, which I love as well. It is that when you turn all the modulation input at maximum, so you just create really crazy sounds. And of course, the total feedback here, when it's activated, it's complete chaos here. So anything can happen. And the other genius idea is that you can play this instrument in two different ways. The fast, so you can quickly activate sounds, or the long release. And the most beautiful thing about this long release is the sound changes while it's being released. So you just leave it. Oh, sorry, it's back on the fast. This is going down like a bomb. And then in the end it does. I mean, there's so many sounds in that release already. Which is this is incredible. It's like a small instrument, and to have all these functions, and they're all very well thought out in a performance mode. So switching to total feedback will totally change your sound palette. And changing the modulation sources here. The modulate also, you can change the waveform. You can change the modulate, the hyper LFO, the logic functions, the distortion. Everything is really well thought out. And like, to go back to the beginning, I knew this was a great instrument, but just to have it and play with it, it's a completely different experience, obviously. So what do I have here? I have two of them, and I have the Zen Delay, which is my trusted companion with most of my stereo sets, just because he has extra distortion with a completely different character, and a filter. A really good sounding filter, and a delay section. And this is just another color in your palette, let's say, when you are performing with this instrument. Definitely the high pass filter, because there's so many lows in this. Like, That's a very interesting gesture that came out of nothing. So you have a few more elements to play with, and because this instrument gives you the time, you don't have to constantly play it. With the long release and with the hold here, you have the time to also use just another device that adds some extra sounds. So why stereo? Well, I do love the Seattle Lombard experience. Everything is in stereo in there, and that takes me back to early electronic music, where a lot of compositions, the panning is insane. If you just listen to them, also in headphones, sometimes you get dizzy from that. Because I guess, I don't know, when was the first headphones made? Did they had headphones in the 50s? I'm guessing they did. But anyway, it wasn't made for headphones. I think that music was made for speakers, like big speakers. And there's a lot of compositions made with the right channel and the left channel in mind. So the right channel will have different sounds on the left channel, or the same sound in slightly different filtering, or using the stereo system as a composition tool to create different sounds for left and right, or a sound that evolves and goes from left to right, and all these things that you can find in all kinds of pop productions nowadays, rock pop productions, normal electronic music also as well, like popular electronic music. All these experimental ideas are in the mainstream now. Just take one modern album, electronic music album, and you hear all these techniques in there. So yes, I have two of them, and one is panned right and one is left, and in that way I can have them at the same time, but I give them more space. So what I'm going to do is just an exploration, because I talked too much. So I'm just gonna turn the panning back left and right, and I'm just gonna explore a little bit with no idea what is happening. So I did prepare, because somebody asked, do I prepare? I thought, okay, what is interesting here? Okay, here I will have fast release, and here I will have long release, or I will have the mod on this part on maximum and this on minimum, or just out, and just have a few differences between the two Lyras, so that I can just create a bigger variety, and different settings on the delay, the drive. Just because the Erica Synth has also a drive button on this thing, you gotta hear the differences. So that's something interesting to hear, how two different distortions, and you can experiment with external distortions as well with other ones. So this is the low note without distortion, and now with distortion. So rich, so many frequencies in there. It's beautiful. The Zen Delay was activated in this case. There was some delay, some high pass filter in it. So I'm just gonna leave it this way, the way it was, and I'm just gonna turn down this and open this drive now. Beautiful. So this is more vocal, like more middle frequencies are coming out, a bit more singing. This is more of the low frequency. It adds more weight to the sound. So that's an interesting comparison. You can also use this with an external one of it with an external distortion, or you can have this one go to an external distortion, this one in a different distortion, and then put it in the mixer together, left and right. Very interesting to work with different distortions. Obviously, reverb is also an interesting addition here. But yeah, the brutality, yeah. You would want more brutality, not to lose it, because the reverb will have, not all the reverbs, but it will just make the sound a little bit more round and will be a little bit lost in space, let's say. Okay, so I'll put the panning and, maybe I just play something so there is a note happening. So yeah, this is it. This is 30-minute video. Unbelievable. Well, you can get lost in it, obviously. Some nice parts, some parts a little bit confusing. You definitely need to be more economic. Don't do too much on this. Let the sounds die out, because on the release, that's notes that I keep for myself for the next time. The release is very interesting. And when you're gonna turn the knobs to the fast release, then you can do more active things. And of course, you have to be careful a little bit with the slow frequencies on left and right, where they can create a little bit of a confusion. Filter is very interesting. An extra delay is always handy with a different sound. And the drive also, both drives can be combined really nicely, because this is pushing more middle high frequencies. So it is an interesting combination. So I'll stop here because it's really long. Until the next one.